Hello again, students. It's me, Caroline. Imagine a world where an elected representative actually represents the people, making personal phone calls, requesting responses to opinion polls by the mail, assembling a crack team of canvassers who are sent out to learn all the issues that really matter to the people on the ground. Those canvassers then relay those concerns back, unchanged and unfiltered, right into the ear of that same representative who sent them. Now, imagine a world where that same politician takes the interests of her constituents and, using her vast intelligence, as well as her social prowess, maneuvers like a ninja through the unforgiving tangle of bureaucracy and red tape that is our federalist system, pulling long hours, brushing the right elbows, bending all the right ears, and because of her work ethic, eventually lands her district that bridge they've so desperately needed for years, that contract to clean the toxic waste dump at the outskirts of town, and she even gets funding for that crucial rehabilitation facility to help those living in distress on her district's streets. Wow! All in a day's work. So, why aren't politicians like this everywhere? Sure, a few of these characteristics may be present in some of our modern representatives, but truly, doesn't it seem like sometimes politicians just aren't listening to what the majority of their constituents want? We are a democracy, aren't we? What role does public opinion have in the creation of policy anyway? Before we go forward, let's go all the way back to the beginning. As we have discussed throughout the course, you are the source of political power. Today, we consider the will of the people to be the deciding factor. But as we have also seen, there are pressures in society that can minimize our political voice. Today, we will define public opinion and analyze its role in policy creation, as well as evaluate how wealth impacts that role. Today's essential question: how does the distribution of wealth impact the role of public opinion in policy creation? The Constitution begins with, "We the people." This phrase indicates that our government is a tool of the people, and the Constitution is a social contract between the people, or the public. So then, what is public opinion? Word alert! Public opinion refers to the general views of the public on any given issue. These can vary based on a person's political leaning, approximation to the specific issue, wealth, and/or social identity. A wide range of issues, such as climate change, international conflicts and trade, employment, inflation, and housing, falls under the purview of public policy. Why? Because these issues impact us as a nation. There is typically a give-and-take, risk versus reward choice when it comes to policy creation. Some policies have a disproportionate effect on different segments of the population. These effects may be intentional in order to redistribute resources and wealth to underserved populations. Some effects may also be unintentional, which is often the case when it comes to policies dealing with zoning and development in historically poor neighborhoods. It's that time again. Time to show what you know. Please define public opinion. So, how does public opinion function within a republic or a representative democracy like ours? Well, in a republic, public opinion is meant to guide the actions of politicians. Through public opinion, politicians determine issues, consider possible solutions, and test the usefulness of policy proposals. For example, healthcare has been a major public policy issue since the 1990s. Numerous reforms had been proposed, but also lobbied against by different private interests, such as insurance companies. The election of Barack Obama was seen as a win for public opinion, since he campaigned heavily around that issue. Within the first year, Congress passed the Affordable Care Act. So what about politicians who do not listen to public opinion? Well, typically in a democratic republic such as ours, politicians that do not adhere to public opinion risk primary challenges from their own party and/or replacement by candidates from other political parties. So, how can a candidate get to know the needs and wants of their constituents anyway? One way is through public opinion polls. These can be done formally or informally. Formal opinion polls are conducted by professional polling institutions. Now on the opposite end, we have informal polls, which are called straw polls. These polls are typically conducted by the media. Make sure to check out the PDF to learn more about ways public opinion is measured. So, now we know what the public thinks. But, turned out the people at large want something you don't. Whatever can you do? Are you doomed to suffer under the tyrannical will of the majority? Should you take it on the chin like a democratic champ? Nah. You can just join a civic association with like-minded people and work together to raise awareness and sway the minds of the general public. Time again to show what you know. What 3 ways do politicians use public opinion? How is public opinion measured? How does public opinion function in a republic? In our lesson's essential question, we didn't just go over how public opinion impacts policy creation. That may be obvious. No. The question is, how does the distribution of wealth impact the influence of public opinion over policy decisions? Well, as we have covered, representative democracy relies on voting as the main form of participation. But as more and more people earn less and less and vote less, their ability to influence policy through public opinion disintegrates. But how did this process happen? I'm not sure if you know this, but over the last few decades, wealth has become more and more concentrated into the hands of fewer and fewer people in the United States. In fact, a Federal Reserve study of the distribution of wealth since 1990 showed that by the end of 2021, percentages of wealth were distributed like this. Only 27.6% of all wealth would be owned by 40% of the population. 37.5% would be controlled by 10% of the population. Is your jaw on the floor yet? Better pick it up and tape it in place, because here are some even more surprising numbers. A measly 2.6% of all the wealth in the U.S. economy would be owned by the entire bottom 50% of the population. And the big finish? A staggering 32.3% of the entire wealth of the U.S. would be owned by the top 1% of the population. That's right, 1% of the population would have approximately 1/3 of all the wealth in the country. Okay, so wealth distribution is certainly spread out more favorably for small percentages of the population, but what does this have to do with public opinion and policy? Well, in the end you will see, but first, some more interesting numbers. Let's look at which income brackets vote the most and which ones vote the least. Based on the U.S. Census data, the percent of voter turnout based on income was laid out like this. Out of households earning less than $10,000 per year, only 39.3% of these reported voting. For households reporting earning between $30,000 and $39,999, 53.3% reported voting. Okay, so the percentage of people voting went up by almost 10% with the increase in income. The trend continues as you ascend the income ladder. At the high end, out of households that reported earning $150,000 or more a year, a whopping 80.4% reported voting. So what does this reveal? That as people earn more, they vote more. Okay, so the more people earn, the more they vote. So that's the way the distribution of wealth affects policy, right? Let's go deeper. This income-voter turnout relationship creates a situation in which top earners and corporate interests have a larger sway over policy. More votes means more pressure on political parties to adopt platforms and run candidates that in turn help increase these top earners' wealth and power. This increase of wealth for the top creates further deficits of wealth for the bottom, which in turn decreases the bottom's voter turnout. You starting to see the cycle this creates? As the rich gain more wealth and influence, the poor lose more influence and wealth. So now you see, wealth distribution does seem to affect public policy in a very real way. But to be fair, it's not like the rich are telling the poor not to vote, right? What's keeping lower earners from the polls? Democracy relies on participation on a regular basis, but voting only occurs every 2 to 4 years, which reduces the average citizen to limited participation. Participation in political processes, media activities, civic assemblies, and other activities beyond voting encourage voting and strengthen public opinion as well. Hold the phone, though. We're not just saying that poor people are just unmotivated to go vote. Involvement can be hard for impoverished people due to obvious factors such as lack of time and income. The pressure to earn more for survival requires many people living in poverty to hold multiple jobs, which diminishes time. Finally, as the influence of public opinion wanes, it encourages further apathy and depoliticization because people feel more and more powerless. Representatives and their policies then further come to represent the special interests of upper-class and corporate America as more and more middle and lower-class earners stop participating. The inescapable truth is that, in a democratic republic such as ours, voting is the essential pathway to social participation because it holds government officials accountable to the phrase, "we the people." But another truth must be weighed against the first, and this truth is that vast amounts of wealth are used by interest groups to affect the political landscapes, the candidates that choose to run, and the policies they take up. With this last truth in mind, two questions arise for our last Show What You Know of the day. The first is this: how does the financing of political messaging impact the message itself? The second is this: how do these messages impact public opinion and therefore the policies possible? Recap! Today we learned that public opinion is the general view of the public on any given issue. We also learned that, in a republic, public opinion is intended to be a guiding force in policy creation. With that being said, the amount of money spent on elections, the concentration of wealth, and the depoliticization of lower earners potentially diminishes public opinion's impact on the policy process. That's it for us today. In the next lesson, we will discuss the role of special interest groups on the policy process, how these groups impact democracy, and the need for citizens to use our constitutional rights to organize and compete for a political voice. Thanks for donating your time. Have a great day, and don't forget to vote, debate, and participate.